Marriage to Ethan Gray right in front of the mourning hall at his grand funeral. I died from sudden cardiac arrest holding tightly in my hand the only inheritance he left me, a wrinkled almost torn 10-cent bill. Just a few hours earlier, the Gray family's private attorney had announced Ethan's legally notarized will in front of all our relatives and friends. He left his entire business empire, worth billions, to my stepsister, Lily White. He even created a special trust fund worth tens of millions for one single purpose. If I ever challenged any of the property he gave to Lily, the fund would be used strictly to hire a team of lawyers to fight me in court. In the video, Ethan, was wearing the black suit I had once picked out for him with my own hands. His face was indifferent, and in his eyes was the same untouched frost I had seen for 40 years. He removed the wedding ring he had worn on his finger for 4 decades and tossed it into the trash can beside him as casually as throwing away garbage. The camera gave the ring a close-up. It lay in the shadow of the trash can like an abandoned star, its light extinguished in an instant. Emily, back then you came to me with nothing. You married me with only 10 cents. Now I'm returning that 10 cents to you. We owe each other nothing. It's all wiped clean. In one short sentence, he devalued the 40 years I had poured my life into, reduced everything to nothing. I knew he hated me. He hated that 40 years ago. On the night before the countryside assignment list was finalized, I had secretly switched Lily's application form. Back then, he and Lily were deeply in love, but for the sake of his future, he had been forced to marry me, the factory director's pampered but scandal-marked daughter. And now, with that 10-cent bill, he stomped the last bit of my dignity into the ground and crushed it completely. After the lawyer finished reading the will, Lily approached me wearing a pure white dress, graceful and delicate like a lotus swaying in the faintest breeze. She leaned down, and in a voice that only the two of us could hear, she whispered into my ear with contempt, "Sister, do you see it now? What good did it do you to use dirty tricks to marry him? His heart, his body, his money, every part of him has been mine for 40 years. You were just someone taking up space you didn't deserve. A joke. A complete failure." Her breath brushed the shell of my ear, carrying that sickening sweetness unique to a victor. I lifted my gaze to her flawlessly maintained face, untouched by time, and my heart felt like an invisible hand had seized it, squeezing so hard I could barely breathe. As the guests slowly left, the enormous mourning hall was empty except for me and Ethan's black and white portrait. He still looked handsome in the picture, only distant, just as he had always been. I clenched the 10-cent bill in my palm. Its coarse edge dug into my skin like a dull blade, slicing into my flesh again and again. 40 years of marriage had been a magnificent cage I had built with my own hands. I once believed that if I gave enough, even the coldest mountain of ice could be warmed by me. I gave birth to his children, cared for his parents, managed his household, and handled all his social responsibilities. I transformed from a pampered factory director's daughter into an all-capable fighter. For him, I even gave up my career and my pride, helping him grow the small workshop he founded into a business empire worth billions. But in the end, it was all just an illusion, empty and meaningless. I lost, completely and utterly. The stabbing pain in my heart grew sharper and sharper, and my vision began to blur. Ethan's image, the light before my eyes blurred into a whirl of shifting shadows. In the moment I collapsed, the last thing in my fading consciousness was Lily White's triumphant smile. If there were another life, I would never again take a winning hand and ruin it so completely. Emily, wake up. Mom wants you to get up and eat. You need strength to pack your things after breakfast. A voice I found both familiar and unfamiliar sounded next to my ear, carrying a faint hint of impatience. I jolted awake. The first thing that came into view was a mottled yellowing wall. On it hung a propaganda poster promoting the agricultural movement. Outside the narrow wooden window was the typical red brick wall of an old residential building. Where was I? Wasn't I dead? Emily, why are you spacing out? A fresh, pretty face leaned close to mine, arched brows, almond-shaped eyes, Lily White, 40 years younger. She wore a crisp white synthetic fiber shirt, and 2 black braids hung over her chest. She looked pure, like a spotless little white flower. But I knew better. The inside of this pure white flower had long been rotted pitch black by jealousy and greed. Instinctively, I touched my own face. The skin under my fingertips was smooth, supple, filled with youthful elasticity. I looked at my hands, slender, fair, without the calluses or wrinkles left behind by decades of exhausting labor. On the wall, the calendar had a date circled in red pencil, August 20th, 1975. I had been reborn, returned to the day before the turning point that shaped my entire fate. Tomorrow, the factory would announce the list of this year's educated youths being sent to the countryside. In my previous life, it was tonight that my stepmother, Clara Wong, Lily's biological mother, prepared a lavish meal pretending to celebrate me. They drugged the wine, got me completely unconscious, and then Lily sneaked into the archives with my personal seal and swapped our application forms. The one who should have gone to the countryside, her, managed to stay in the city and entered the steel mill where my father worked, becoming a proud factory worker. And I was sent thousands of miles away to a remote rural village. Back then, Ethan Gray was the dream of every girl in the factory. His family background was good. His father was the factory's deputy secretary, and he himself was talented, a key trainee in the technical department. He and Lily had grown up together and had long promised each other their futures. After I was sent away, I fell into despair. My father felt guilty toward me. Coincidentally, Ethan's family was looking for in-laws with connections. My father pulled some strings, and in exchange for helping Ethan secure a job transfer, he forced Ethan to marry me. Ethan agreed, but he made one humiliating condition: I had to marry into his family with nothing but the 10 cents in my pocket. He said it was punishment for the dirty trick I'd used. For the chance to return to the city, for the chance to marry the man I had secretly loved for years, I gritted my teeth and accepted. I thought it would be the start of my happiness, but instead, it became the beginning of a 40-year tragedy. And now, in this life, I was back, returned to the moment before everything collapsed. This time, I wouldn't let them succeed. Everything that belonged to me, I would take back. And everything they owed me, I would make them repay with interest. Emily, why are you staring into space? Hurry up, Mom's waiting. Seeing that I still wasn't moving, Lily reached out to grab me. I stepped aside to avoid her hand and looked at her with icy eyes. Lily froze at my expression, then pouted pitifully. What's wrong with you? Why are you looking at me like that? Lily asked. I tugged at the corner of my lips, revealing a cold, faint smile. Nothing. Let's go. At dinner, Clara Wong suddenly became unusually warm, constantly picking food into my bowl. Emily, eat more. Look how thin you are. Mom knows you're sad and can't bear to leave home, but there's nothing we can do. Our family only has you and Lily. One of you has to answer the nation's call. You're the older sister. You should let your younger sister have the easier path. As she spoke, she poured me a full glass of white liquor. Here, drink this. Once you get to the countryside, forget all the troubles of the city. Reform yourself well. Try to come back early. In my previous life, I was moved by this fake display of motherly affection and drank the drugged wine with tears in my eyes. But in this life, watching her clumsy performance only made me feel utterly ridiculous. Lily chimed in as well, pretending to be supportive. Yeah, Emily, don't worry. After you leave, I'll write to you often. I'll send you things, too. And I'll go visit you with Ethan. When she mentioned Ethan's name, the pride and smugness in her eyes nearly overflowed. I sneered inwardly, though on the surface I showed a touched expression, lifting the wine glass with slightly reddened eyes. Mom, Lily, thank you. Don't worry. Once I arrive in the countryside, I'll do my best. I raised my head and drained the glass in one go. The spicy liquid burned down my throat like fire. Clara and Lily exchanged a glance, both showing a satisfied smile of a plan going smoothly. That's more like it, Clara said approvingly as she patted my hand. Eat up. Finish soon and get some rest. I pretended to be overwhelmed by the alcohol, resting my head on the table with my eyes half closed, watching them through the corner of my gaze. I saw Clara quietly pull a small paper packet from her pocket and pour the white powder inside into my water cup. "Mom, is this okay? What if she wakes up in the middle of the night?" Lily asked anxiously. "Relax. I got this sleeping powder from a special source. The effect is strong. She'll sleep like a dead pig. Nothing could wake her," Clara whispered harshly. "This ungrateful girl has enjoyed my daughter's identity for more than 10 years. It's finally time she paid us back. As long as you stay in the city and marry Ethan, your future will be full of good days." Lily nodded hard, her face glowing with longing for the future. Listening to their vicious conversation, my heart turned icy cold. These were the family I had poured my heart and soul into in my previous life. After dinner, I pretended to be dizzy, allowing Lily to kindly help me back to my room. Lying on the bed, I closed my eyes and listened carefully to the sounds outside. After about half an hour, I heard noises from next door, followed by the soft click of a closing door. They were on the move. I immediately sprang up from the bed, fully alert without the slightest sign of drunkenness. While they were distracted earlier, I had already poured the wine into the flower pot beneath the windowsill. As for the drugged water, I hadn't touched it at all. Moving silently, I followed them out, keeping a distance behind them. It was late at night and the corridors of the residential building were completely empty. Clara and Lily crept ahead, sneaking through the darkness. We walked all the way to the factory's office building. Clara Wong was clearly prepared. She pulled a key from her pocket and opened the archives room door with practiced ease. Lily began searching through the stacks of forms looking for our application files. In the darkness, I could hear the sound of papers rustling. I didn't rush in right away. Instead, I quietly circled around to the other side of the office building, dragged over an abandoned wooden ladder and climbed onto the small ledge outside the archives room window. The window hadn't been fully closed. There was a narrow gap. Through that slit, I could clearly see Lily White pull out 2 forms from a stack. One was hers and one was mine. On my application, the box for volunteering to go to the countryside had been checked. On hers, she had applied for the city work placement. She quickly swapped the inner pages of the 2 forms, then stamped the countryside application with my personal seal. After finishing everything, she let out a long breath, unable to hide her excitement. "Mom, it's done." "Good. Well done. Let's go." "Don't let anyone find us," Clara urged. Just as they were about to leave, I took something out of my pocket, a letter. After coming back to life, I had dug it out from the deepest corner of the drawer using the memory of my previous life. It was a love letter that Ethan Gray had written to Lily. In my last life, Clara had discovered this letter and flew into a rage, almost making a scene at the Gray family home. Lily had knelt and begged her to keep it quiet. But afterward, this letter became leverage Clara used to control both Lily and Ethan. I unfolded the letter and using the faint moonlight, carefully imitated Lily's handwriting and added a paragraph on the back. In response to the call of our great leader, I, Lily White, voluntarily give up my opportunity for city placement and apply to go where the motherland needs me most, to the hardest and most remote countryside. I dedicate my youth and my passion. My resolve will never change, not until death. When I finished writing, I folded the letter neatly and slipped it through the window gap, letting it fall perfectly onto the pile of documents they had just disrupted. Once everything was done, I silently returned the way I came and went back to my room. Lying on the bed, the corner of my lips curled into a cold, sharp smile. "Lily White, Clara Wong, you want me to be sent to the countryside? Then I'll give you a great gift in return." In this life, the one who should go to the countryside and reform herself was her, Lily White. The next morning, the factory's loudspeakers began broadcasting the slogan about broad lands and great achievements. The residential compound was bustling with noise. Everyone gathered around the announcement board at the factory gate, waiting to see this year's list of educated youths being sent to the countryside. Clara and Lily woke up early as well, both wearing secretive, knowing smiles. "Lily, once the list comes out today, you'll officially be a worker at the steel mill. I've already spoken with your Uncle Gray. You'll start with an easy logistics position. After you marry Ethan, we'll find a way to transfer you to a better post. As Clara fussed with Lily's collar, she fantasized aloud about the bright future ahead. Lily shyly lowered her head. Mom, we're not even engaged yet. Don't say things like that. What do you mean, don't say that? You and Ethan are a perfect match. No one can separate the two of you, Clara declared confidently, and she even cast a disdainful glance at me. I lowered my head, pretending not to see her little gesture, but inside, I was laughing coldly. Really? We'll see after today how perfect you two still are. The three of us walked to the announcement board. By the time we arrived, the place was already surrounded layer upon layer with people. The list is out. The list is out, someone shouted, and the crowd instantly erupted into commotion. Clara Wong, relying on her tall, broad frame, forced her way to the very front. She craned her neck, scanning the red paper with effort. Just a few seconds later, the smile on her face froze. No, impossible. How could this be? She muttered, her face turning ghostly pale. Lily White, panicking, tiptoed to look over the shoulders of the crowd. When she finally saw the name clearly written in bold brushstrokes, she let out a sharp scream, nearly fainting. Mom, why is it my name? Why is my name on the countryside assignment list? Her scream drew everyone's attention. I pushed forward just in time, pretending to be shocked as I looked at the list. Then I pointed at the name with disbelief. Lily, how can it be you? Didn't we agree it would be me? My words ignited the powder keg completely. Clara lunged forward like a madwoman, reaching up to tear the notice off the board. There must be a mistake. This has to be wrong. My daughter applied for city placement. How could she possibly be sent to the countryside? The factory clerk immediately blocked her. Comrade Wong, what do you think you're doing? The list was reviewed and approved by higher authorities. There can't be a mistake. There is a mistake, Clara shrieked hysterically. My daughter applied for city placement. It was supposed to be Emily going to the countryside. Nonsense, the clerk said, frowning. What we received was Lily White's voluntary countryside application, complete with a handwritten declaration of determination. It was extremely heartfelt, deeply moving. The leadership even praised her ideological awareness and wants to use her as a model example. As he spoke, the clerk pulled a document from his briefcase, the very love letter I had tampered with. Everyone can look for yourselves. It's all here in black and white. Voluntarily giving up the city placement opportunity, going to where the motherland needs me most. This handwriting can't be faked. People immediately crowded around. Well, look at that. Such strong resolve. I didn't expect this from Lily. She always seemed so delicate. This declaration is inspiring. Even I, a grown man, feel moved after reading it. Hearing the surrounding praise, Clara and Lily's faces went pale, then red, then pale again. Lily, trembling with rage and panic, jabbed a finger at me and shouted, it was her. She did this. She forged that letter. In an instant, all eyes turned to me. I immediately put on an expression of being wronged and wounded, leaning weakly against my father's arm. Dad, I didn't. I don't know why Lily would accuse me like this. My father, George Lynn, the director of the steel mill, cared more about his reputation than anything. Seeing the chaos unfolding before him, his face darkened like the bottom of a burnt pot. Enough. Haven't you made a big enough scene already? He snapped at Clara and Lily. Then he turned to the clerk, forcing a polite smile. Mr. Zhang, I'm terribly sorry. The children at home are immature and have caused trouble. Since Lily has such high ideological awareness, as her parents, we will fully support the state's decision. Dad. Lily stared at him in disbelief. Shut up, George glared at her. We'll deal with this at home. Clara tried to start another outburst, but George cut her off with a single sharp warning look. The whole farce ended with the final conclusion that Lily White would indeed be sent to the countryside. On the way home, both Clara Wong and Lily looked absolutely terrible. Lily's eyes were swollen and red, and she glared at me as if she wanted to tear 2 pieces of flesh off my body. I knew they would never let this go so easily, and sure enough, the moment we closed the door at home, Clara could no longer hold back. She aimed a slap straight at my face. You little, this must be your doing. But I had expected this. I stepped aside and let her swing at nothing. Mom, what are you doing? I'm upset too that Lily has to go to the countryside, but it was her own choice. How can you blame me? I said with an innocent expression, still pretending. Lily lunged at me, trying to tear at my hair. It was you. Who else could it be? I'll kill you. I dodged flexibly and hid behind my father. Dad, look at them. They've lost their minds. Enough. All of you stop it. George Lynn finally exploded. He slammed his hand on the table and the whole room shook. Clara, look at the daughter you raised. Swapping application forms, such disgusting tricks. Now that she's been exposed, you two want to bump the blame on Emily? You two have ruined my reputation. Given my father's intelligence, he had clearly pieced together the truth. What shocked him was that the daughter he'd always believed to be gentle and obedient, Lily, could commit such deceit. He also recognized that the so-called declaration letter had two different handwriting styles. The love letter portion was Ethan's writing, and the added paragraph imitating Lily's hand was obviously different. But he didn't care what the real truth was. What mattered to him was his reputation and status. Lily being assigned to the countryside was already confirmed, and she had been promoted as an advanced ideological model. If they made a scene now and exposed the swapping of application forms, the entire family would become the factory's laughingstock, and his position as factory director would be destroyed. So he had no choice but to swallow the humiliation and force the matter down. This ends here. No one is allowed to bring it up again. George ordered coldly. Lily, spend the next 2 days preparing what you need for the countryside. Your mother will help you pack. Take this as a chance for growth. He slammed the door and left with a dark expression. Only the three of us women remained in the room. Clara and Lily stared at me with eyes full of hatred, as if they wanted to devour me alive. I knew this was only the beginning. In my previous life, their family had made me bear every ounce of suffering. In this life, I would make them, especially Lily, taste that pain 100,000 times over. Because Lily was now considered a role model, her departure date was set quickly, just 3 days later. During those 3 days, the atmosphere at home was suffocating. Clara cried all day, looking at me as if she wanted to poison me. Lily locked herself in her room, refusing to eat or drink, and even threatened to hang herself, only to be forcefully stopped by Clara. Meanwhile, because I had sacrificed my city placement opportunity for my younger sister, my father, George Lynn, showed me a rare trace of approval. For the first time ever, he took the initiative to ask, Emily, what are your plans? Do you want to work in the factory? Of course I did. In my previous life, this opportunity should have belonged to me, but Lily snatched it away. Dad, I'll follow your arrangement. I replied obediently. George nodded in satisfaction. Good. I'll speak with HR later. I'll arrange for you to work at the factory's broadcast station. It's easy work and respectable. The factory broadcast station suited me perfectly. In my previous life, just to assist Ethan Gray, I had taught myself paperwork management and foreign languages, and I had trained myself to speak flawless standard Mandarin. Working at the broadcast station would be effortless for me. More importantly, the broadcast station was the information hub of the entire factory, the high ground of public opinion. I intended to use this place to pave the way for my future. 3 days later, it was time to send off those heading to the countryside. The train station platform was packed with people. Everywhere I looked, I saw crying parents and lovers saying their tearful goodbyes. Lily White wore a brand new green military-style uniform with a large red flower pinned to her chest, though her face was as pale as a ghost. Clara Wong clung to her, crying as if her life depended on it. I stood not far away, watching everything with cold eyes. At that moment, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd and walked toward them. Ethan Gray. He wore a crisp white shirt and black trousers that made him look tall and sharp. His handsome features stood out even in the bustling crowd. The moment he appeared, Lily acted as if she had seen her savior. She broke free from Clara's arms and threw herself into Ethan's embrace. Ethan, I don't want to go. Please take me away. I don't want to go to the countryside. She sobbed, tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain. I saw Ethan's brows furrow tightly. He patted Lily's back to comfort her, but his eyes shifted toward me, complex, probing, confused, and containing a faint, nearly imperceptible trace of resentment. I knew what he was resenting. He must have thought I was the one behind all this, that I had schemed to tear them apart. In my previous life, I feared that look more than anything. Every time I saw it, my heart twisted painfully, turning me into someone small and worthless. But now, I only found it laughable. A man who couldn't even protect the woman he loved, a man who was willing to sacrifice his relationship for his family's interests. What right did he have to look at me as if I had betrayed him? Lily, don't cry. Ethan murmured softly. I promise you, I'll find a way to get you transferred back as soon as possible. Wait for me. Really? Lily asked, lifting her tear-stained face. Really? Ethan nodded solemnly. Then he reached into his pocket and took out a delicate wooden box, pressing it into her hands. I asked someone to bring the snow cream from Shanghai. It's windy in the countryside. Don't let it dry out your skin. There it was again. In my previous life, he had been the same. Cold as ice to me, yet endlessly tender to Lily. The clothes I wore were the leftovers his mother had rejected, while Lily always wore the newest, trendiest outfits. I used cheap oil-based cream that cost a few cents, while he secretly sent Lily expensive snow cream and all kinds of fashionable items, even when she lived far away in the countryside. My 40 years had been spent in this endless cycle of comparison and humiliation. The train whistle blew, urging passengers to board. Lily was pushed along by the crowd as she climbed onto the train, looking back every few steps. Ethan stood on the platform the entire time, his gaze locked on her until the train disappeared from sight. Then he turned around and walked toward me, one step at a time. His eyes were as sharp as a sword forged from shattered ice, piercing straight into me. Emily, are you satisfied now? His voice was exactly the same as it had been in the wool video in my previous life, cold and devoid of emotion. I met his gaze calmly. Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about. Lily went to the countryside because she chose to. Everyone saw the declaration posted on the board. Don't pretend. He snapped, his tone filled with disgust. I know Lily better than you do. He's pure and kind. How could he ever do something like that? It had to be you. You must have used some despicable trick to force him to write that letter. Pure and kind. I almost laughed. It was like hearing the biggest joke in the world. I couldn't stop myself from letting out a short laugh. Ethan, the Lily White that you see and the Lily White the rest of us know are probably not even the same person. What do you mean? He demanded. What do I mean? I let out a faint, cold smile. You'll understand in due time. I looked at him icily. And dropped that self-righteous attitude. Who is Lily to you? And who are you to me? What gives you the right to question me? Ethan froze. It was clear he had never imagined that I, who had always been timid, obedient, and afraid to even raise my voice in front of him, would speak to him with such a sharp, cutting tone. His face flushed red, and after a long moment, he squeezed out a sentence through clenched teeth. Emily, don't get ahead of yourself. One day, I'll make you pay for everything you've done today. I'll be waiting. I tossed the 3 words back at him and walked away without the slightest hesitation. Ethan Gray, this lifetime, the debt between us is only just beginning. Everything you owe me, I'll make you repay with interest. And that so-called true love between you and Lily, I'll tear it apart with my own hands and show you exactly how ugly the two of you really are. After Lily left for the countryside, I smoothly entered the steel mills broadcast station. Clara Wong completely tore off her mask and treated me with open hostility, hitting me or yelling at me for anything. For the sake of his reputation, George Lin occasionally scolded her, but most of the time he simply turned a blind eye. I couldn't be bothered with any of them. I went to work on time every day and poured all my energy into my job. Relying on the experience from my previous life and the insight that far surpassed this era, I quickly established myself in the broadcast station. The news scripts I read always captured the key points, and my wording was precise. The cultural programs I planned were fresh and creative, widely loved by the workers. Before long, I became a minor celebrity in the factory. Everyone knew that the broadcast station had a new girl named Emily with a beautiful voice, a pretty face, and, most importantly, real talent. Naturally, that attracted jealousy, including from Ethan Gray. It seemed he was determined to make things difficult for me. One time, the factory was preparing a campaign to promote technological innovation and needed the broadcast station's cooperation. The person in charge of the project happened to be Ethan. He brought me a technical report full of professional jargon and complicated diagrams, demanding that I explain it clearly to all the factory workers during the next day's broadcast in the simplest language possible. He was obviously trying to trip me up. In my previous life, I knew nothing about these things and would have embarrassed myself terribly in front of him. But what he didn't know was that the woman standing before him now was the same one who had worked alongside him to build a company from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. His so-called technical knowledge was child's play to me. I took the report, scanned it briefly, and said calmly, "No problem." Ethan clearly didn't believe me. His lips curled into a mocking smirk. "Emily, if you can't understand it, just say so. Don't put on an act. If tomorrow's broadcast has mistakes and affects the factory's production, can you take responsibility? That won't be necessary. Thank you for your concern, Technician Gray." I didn't even bother to spare him an extra glance. The next day, I sat in front of the broadcast microphone right on time. I didn't read the technical script word for word. Instead, I turned those dry, boring principles into vivid little stories and simple metaphors that anyone could understand. "Comrades," I began. "This centrifugal casting technique we're talking about today may sound complicated, but the principle is actually very simple. When we were kids, we all played with spinning tops, right? The faster the top spins, the easier it is for anything on it to be flung outward. Our centrifugal casting works on that same force." My voice traveled through the factory's loudspeakers, reaching every corner of the plant. Workshops that were originally noisy slowly fell silent as workers stopped what they were doing and listened with interest. Even in the factory director's office, where George Lynn and several other leaders were in the middle of a meeting, they couldn't help but pause and listen. When the 15-minute broadcast ended, the entire factory erupted in thunderous applause. George's face was filled with pride and surprise. He clapped the technical department chief on the shoulder. "Old Lee, your department's innovation was explained so clearly that even I, an outsider, could understand it. Excellent. Truly excellent." Meanwhile, standing in the workshop, Ethan Gray looked absolutely awful. He had planned to watch me embarrass myself, but instead, he'd handed me the perfect opportunity to shine. And I had shone brilliantly. Listening to the workers' excited discussions and their endless praise for me, his face burned with humiliation. It was the sting of a plan completely backfiring. From that day on, Ethan never tried to make trouble for me again. The way he looked at me also changed. From pure resentment to something far more complicated. I knew then that I had successfully planted a thorn in that arrogant heart of his. Time passed day by day, and my life gradually returned to a stable rhythm. My growing success at work helped me regain confidence and dignity. But that calm didn't last long. It was shattered by a letter from the countryside. The letter was from Lily White. She cried on the pages about how difficult life was there. How she had to do heavy farm labor every day. How she couldn't eat well or dress warmly. How she was harassed by local troublemakers. But at the end, her tone changed abruptly, and she mentioned Ethan. "Emily, how are you and Ethan doing? Is he still angry with me? Please talk to him for me and remind him of our promise. He must transfer me back as soon as possible." There were even a few dried tear stains at the bottom of the letter. Pitiful, if you didn't know better. If I had received this letter in my previous life, I would have softened immediately. I would have felt guilty, worried, and tried everything I could to help her. But now, I only felt disgust. Her so-called harassment from men in the village was nothing more than her flirting with lazy country boys because she couldn't stand loneliness. And her claim of being cold and hungry was laughable. Clara Wong mailed her huge packages almost every month. Food, clothes, daily supplies, you name it. She lived more comfortably than many of us in the city. Her real purpose for writing this letter was simple: to probe the relationship between Ethan and me, and to remind me that Ethan belonged to her, that I shouldn't dare have any wishful thoughts. I let out a cold little laugh, tore the letter to pieces, and tossed it into the trash can. Lily White wants to come back to the city? Over my dead body. You love Ethan so much? You think he's your destiny? Fine. Then I'll let you two destined lovers enjoy a long, bitter, long-distance romance. I wanted to see, without her family's support and without the convenience of being by Ethan's side, how long Ethan's so-called devotion would last. However, I had still underestimated how obsessed Ethan Gray was with Lily White. Not long after, I heard that Ethan's father, Deputy Secretary Charles Gray, was pulling strings everywhere, trying to get Lily transferred back from the countryside. Rumor had it that Ethan even had a huge fight with his family over it, and went so far as to threaten them with a hunger strike. When Clara Wong heard the news, she was overjoyed. She spent every day muttering in front of me about how Lily's good days were finally coming, and how, once she got back, she would get engaged to Ethan right away. A chill tightened in my chest. I absolutely could not let Lily return. If she came back, everything might revert to the path of my previous life. I had to find a way to stop this. But Charles Gray was the second in command of the steel mill. Powerful and well-connected. I was just a new announcer at the broadcast station. How could I possibly fight against him? Just when I felt completely stuck, an unexpected person appeared in my life. That afternoon, as I was walking home from work, I passed a quiet alley and suddenly heard loud arguing. Hand over the money, or don't blame me for what happens next. A rough male voice threatened. Startled, I looked toward the sound and saw two thugs surrounding a man in military uniform. The man's back was to me, tall and straight. Even against two men, he showed no sign of panic. I'm telling you one last time, move, he said, his voice deep and steady, carrying an unquestionable authority. Well, a soldier, huh? Think that makes you special? I'm telling you, if you don't pay up, you're not walking out of here today. One of the thugs sneered as he pulled a knife from his jacket. They were about to attack. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed a brick from the corner and shouted, "Stop. I've called the police. They'll be here any second." The two thugs jerked in surprise. When they turned and saw me, they froze for a moment, then their expressions twisted with rage. "You nosy, we'll take care of you first," one of them yelled, raising the knife as he charged at me. Terrified, I squeezed my eyes shut. But the pain I expected never came. When I cautiously opened them a sliver, the man in uniform was already standing in front of me. In just two swift moves, quick as lightning, he knocked both thugs to the ground. Only when the police finally arrived and took the two men away, did I snap out of my shock. "Thank you, comrade," I said. The man turned around, and for a moment, my breath stopped. It was a face carved with firm lines, thick brows, bright, star-like eyes, a straight nose, tightly pressed lips. His entire being radiated a powerful aura that made people feel both safe and wary of approaching him. He was taller than Ethan, his shoulders broader. The fitted military uniform made him look even more striking, like a tall, unshakable pine tree. "It was nothing," he said, his voice as steady and reliable as he seemed. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," I said, shaking my head. Only then did I notice that my palms were covered in cold sweat. "You were brave," he said. A flicker of approval passed through his dark eyes. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, a man told me I was brave. Ethan always said I was manipulative, willing to do anything to get what I wanted. The thought made my heart skip, and my face warmed with embarrassment. "My name is Lukashin," the man said, introducing himself. "I'm here on leave to visit family." "I'm Emily," I replied. "I work at the steel mill." And that was how we met. Later, I learned that Lucas wasn't just a soldier. He was a decorated young battalion commander with real battlefield merit. He was in town on family visiting leave to see his aunt, who happened to be Dr. Shin from our factory's infirmary. It truly was a twist of fate. Over the next few days, we occasionally ran into each other around the factory. He wasn't very talkative, but every time he saw me, he would stop and greet me. His gaze was always focused, like he was observing me, studying me. It made me uneasy. Yet I couldn't stop my heartbeat from quickening. One day, while I was worrying about how to stop Lily from returning to the city, Dr. Shen approached me and said that Lucas wanted to treat me to a meal to thank me for stepping in that day. I agreed almost without thinking. We met at a state-run restaurant. Lucas was as quiet as always, but he kept placing food into my bowl. "Eat more. You're too thin," he said. Such a simple sentence, yet it made my nose sting. It had been so long since anyone cared about me like that. I lowered my head, stirring my rice, overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't even name. "Did something difficult happen?" he suddenly asked. I looked up and met his deep, steady gaze. In those eyes, I saw clarity, like he could see right through me. I hesitated, then told him about Lily. About the situation with the Gray family trying to pull strings for her return. Of course, I carefully omitted the rebirth and all the filthy truths behind it. I only said that Lily was my stepsister and that things at home were complicated. When I finished, I looked at him nervously, unsure what he would think. Would he, too, believe I was a scheming, jealous sister who couldn't stand to see her sibling do well? Lucas was silent for a moment. Then he set down his chopsticks, looked straight at me, and said slowly and clearly, "Returning from the countryside must follow policy. Any favoritism or abuse of power is a violation of discipline. Leave this matter to me." I was stunned. What are you going to do?" "Follow the rules," he said simply. I didn't know what "follow the rules" meant in his mouth. But when I looked into his calm, resolute eyes, the anxiety in my heart settled without reason. I believed him. A few days later, shocking news swept through the factory. The municipal government had sent a joint investigation team to thoroughly inspect all units for corruption or favoritism in the process of educated youths returning from the countryside. The very first unit to be investigated was our steel mill, and leading the investigation team was none other than the military's disciplinary inspection department. Charles Gray, Ethan's father, was suspended for investigation for abusing his position to secure personal benefits for family members. All return procedures obtained through improper means were nullified. Lily White's dream of returning to the city shattered completely. Not only that, because of the scandal with the Gray family, her days in the countryside became even harsher. Word spread that she had tried to use connections to sneak back into the city and failed, making her a laughingstock. People looked down on her and excluded her wherever she went. When Clara Wong heard the news, she cried and screamed at home, cursing the Gray family for going back on their word. She had ruined his daughter's future, and because Charles Gray was under investigation, Ethan became a laughingstock in the factory. His former halo vanished overnight, leaving him embarrassed and disgraced. I heard all this while I was preparing a script at the broadcast station. Sunshine poured warmly through the window. I knew all of this was thanks to Lucas Shen. He had kept his word. He really had helped me solve a disaster I could never have handled alone. That night, I waited for him at the factory gate. "Thank you," I said sincerely. He looked at me, and the corner of his mouth lifted into a rare, faint smile. "I only did what I should." The street lights stretched our shadows long on the ground. Then he suddenly spoke. "Comrade Emily? I'm returning to my unit in a few days." My heart tightened sharply. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his eyes locked onto mine, steady, blazing, unwavering. "Go ahead," I whispered. "Would you be willing to become the wife of a soldier?" I froze. He was proposing to me. How long had we even known each other? "I know it's sudden," he continued, as if sensing my shock. His tone remained calm, but the tips of his ears were slightly red. "But this isn't an impulse. I've watched you for a long time. You're smart, strong, kind, and brave. You're the most remarkable woman I've ever met. Military marriages are protected by law. If you agree, Emily, from this moment on, I'll devote my entire life to protecting you." "Protect me? For a lifetime?" The words struck my heart like thunder. In my previous life, 40 years of devotion hadn't earned me even a single promise of stability from Ethan. Not one word of commitment, not one moment of peace. And the man standing before me now, after knowing me barely a month, was offering me a vow that felt heavier than gold. My eyes instantly reddened. I looked at him, at his upright, resolute features, at the sincerity and determination shining in his gaze. And suddenly I realized this might be a chance heaven was giving me. A chance to break completely from my past, to start over and truly live. In my previous life, love was a trap that destroyed me. I was obsessed, blinded, ruined. In this life, I no longer wanted some vague, fragile dream of romance. I wanted a stable home, a man who could shield me from the storms of life. And Lucashan was undoubtedly the best choice. I took a deep breath, met his eyes, and nodded firmly. I will. Our marriage happened quickly. Because it was a military marriage, the process was simple. We went to the local office to register, then invited Dr. Shen and a few close colleagues to dinner. That was it. We were married. George Lin, my father, had no objections. Lucas was a young battalion commander with a bright future. For him, as factory director, my marrying such a man only brought honor to the family. The only one who nearly exploded was Clara Wong. Emily, you shameless little fox. Stealing Lily's City Post quota wasn't enough. Now you're seducing an officer? I'm telling you, I won't let you have peace. She screamed at me in the house, hurling insults. I looked at her coldly. From the moment I married Lucas Shen, I became the wife of a soldier. And by national law, sabotaging a military marriage is a criminal offense. If you want to spend a few years in prison, go ahead and try. One sentence shut her up completely. No matter how unreasonable she was, even Clara Wong didn't dare challenge state law. When Ethan Gray learned I was married, he fell into a depression. One day, I ran into him on the street. Drunk, he staggered toward me and blocked my path. Why, Emily? Why did you get married so fast? Were you trying to get back at me? Ethan's eyes were bloodshot as he confronted me. Looking at his disheveled, pathetic state, I felt nothing but irony. Get back at you, Ethan? I said, expressionless, you think too highly of yourself. I stepped around him and walked away without looking back. He stopped mattering to me a long time ago. On the third day after our wedding, Lucas Shen had to return to his unit. The night before he left, he placed a bank book and a ring of keys in my hands. These are all my allowances from the past years. The password is your birthday, and these are the keys to the housing the army assigned me. Once I get back and settle things, I'll file a report to bring you over as a military spouse. As I held the heavy bankbook, my heart swelled with complicated emotions. In my previous life, when I married Ethan, he had given me nothing but a single dime. In this life, Lucas entrusted everything he had to me without hesitation. Lucas, I looked at him, my voice trembling, you treat me so well. Aren't you afraid you're trusting the wrong person? He reached out and gently stroked my hair, a tenderness almost unimaginable from a hardened soldier. I trust my own judgment. Then he lowered his head and pressed a soft kiss to my forehead. Wait for me. After seeing him off, I began my new life. Without Clara Wong's suppression, without Ethan's entanglement, my days became more peaceful and comfortable than ever. My work at the broadcast station improved rapidly, and I was soon promoted to deputy director. I also took night classes, picking up English again. I knew the future belonged to people with knowledge and vision. I couldn't rely solely on Lucas. I needed to become a woman capable of standing beside him. Half a year later, Lucas's military spouse transfer request was approved. I submitted my resignation to the factory, completed the paperwork, and boarded a northbound train. It was an entirely unfamiliar environment, a strictly regulated military compound. Lucas came to pick me up at the station. The moment I saw him, all my worries vanished. He had lost weight and looked darker from the sun, but his eyes were as bright as ever. And when he saw me, that usually stern face softened into a rare smile. He took my hand and held it tightly. Welcome home, Mrs. Shen. Life in the military compound was both exactly as I imagined and completely different. Relationships were much simpler than in the factory, yet the place had its own rules. The other military wives came from all over the country, each with different personalities. Because Lucas was a battalion commander, my status naturally rose, and some people made snide remarks or tried to fish for information. But after 2 lifetimes of navigating family and workplace politics, these little tricks were nothing to me. I remembered Lucas's words well. Be sincere, but keep boundaries. Don't talk too much. Don't meddle too much. Before long, I had earned the respect of most people in the compound. Lucas was very busy. Whenever he went on missions, he might be gone for 10 days or half a month, but I never felt lonely. I spent my time turning our home into something warm and welcoming. I also signed up for training courses organized by the military district, studying accounting and management. Everyone noticed my progress. So much so that even the usually stern wife of the division commander publicly praised me during a family meeting. Comrade Emily Shen, the wife of Battalion Commander Shen, is the role model for all military spouses. She manages her home beautifully and also continues improving herself. She's an example we should all learn from. Lucas looked at me, pride and affection practically overflowing from his eyes. Between me and Lucas, our feelings quietly deepened in the calm, gentle rhythm of daily life. I slowly discovered that beneath his cold, disciplined exterior, he carried an incredibly soft and tender heart. He remembered all my preferences. When I had my period, he would quietly prepare warm brown sugar water for me. On his days off, he would clumsily try to cook the dishes I liked. At night, he would hold me tightly in his arms, whispering how much he missed me. My long frozen heart slowly warmed, softened, melted. I began to look forward to every one of his returns. I grew accustomed to falling asleep safely in his embrace. I think I truly fell in love with him. Just when I thought my life would continue happily like this, 2 unwelcome visitors shattered my peace, Ethan Gray and Lily White. I didn't know how they managed it, but they had somehow made their way to the same city. Ethan's father, Charles Gray, had ultimately only received a disciplinary punishment for his misconduct and was transferred to a remote state-owned factory in the north to serve as deputy director. As for Lily, after 2 years in the countryside, she was recommended into a worker-peasant-soldier university due to good performance, and upon graduation, she too was assigned here. They were like ghosts from a past life, lingering, refusing to disappear, once again stepping into my world. One day, Lucas and I were shopping in the city when we unexpectedly ran into them. The moment Lily saw me, she immediately clung to Ethan's arm, striking a pose that screamed territorial claim. She was dressed in a fashionable floral dress, her hair permed in big curls. She looked far more polished than she had 2 years ago, but the greed and jealousy in her eyes were still just as obvious. "Emily, long time no see. I didn't expect to meet you here," she said with a bright smile, though her gaze kept flicking between me and Lucas. Ethan's expression was dark. His eyes lingered on Lucas's hand tightly holding mine, unreadable and stormy. "This is my husband, Lucas Shen," I introduced calmly. "Commander Shen, I've heard a lot about you," Ethan said, extending his hand. There was a subtle, hard-to-detect provocation in his tone. Lucas shook his hand with a grip neither light nor heavy, his face expressionless. "Deputy Director Gray." Just 3 simple words, yet they carried a pressure that made Ethan's face stiffen even more. "Didn't expect my sister to marry so well," Lily said sourly. "Such good fortune, unlike poor me. I suffered so much in the countryside. If it weren't for Ethan waiting for me all this time, I don't know what I would have done." As she spoke, she leaned affectionately against Ethan's chest, playing the role of a loving, devoted partner. Watching their cheap little performance, I found it laughable. "Is that so? Then congratulations to both of you." My tone was mild. "We still have errands to run. We'll get going." I turned, pulling Lucas with me, not giving them another second. Behind me, I could feel Lily's hateful, poisonous gaze stabbing into my back like needles. When we returned home, Lucas looked at me. "You're upset?" I shook my head, then nodded. "I just didn't expect them to follow me here like lingering ghosts." "Then we'll deal with whatever comes," he said simply, wrapping his arms around me. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Yes, with him, what was there to fear? In this lifetime, I was no longer the isolated, helpless girl I used to be. I had the strongest support behind me. But I still underestimated Lily's malice. When she saw how deeply Lucas and I loved each other, how happy my life was, while her relationship with Ethan was cracking from 2 years of separation and all kinds of real-world pressures, she became jealous, bitter, furious. And then, Lily's jealousy grew so extreme, it bordered on madness. She began scheming to destroy my life in every possible way. First, she spread rumors everywhere, claiming that I had used shameful methods to marry Lucas Shen, and that back home, I'd had an improper relationship with Ethan Gray. The gossip spread wildly through the military compound. Though most of the military wives didn't believe such nonsense, repeated rumors were enough to drown a person. I trembled with rage, but Lucas was calmer than I was. He went directly to Ethan's father, Charles Gray. I didn't know what they talked about, but the next day, Charles dragged Ethan and Lily to our door to apologize in person. Lily looked completely unwilling, and Ethan kept his head down the entire time, not daring to look at me. "Commander Shen, Comrade Emily," Charles said with a stiff, flattering smile. "I'm very sorry. It's my failure in discipline that caused trouble for you. I've already punished them severely. Lily is young and thoughtless. Please don't hold it against her." Lucas sat on the sofa, his face dark and cold. "There's no need to apologize. I only hope this is the last time. My wife is not someone anyone can bully, and the sanctity of a military marriage is not something to be defiled. If something like this happens again, I won't accept apologies. I'll submit evidence directly to the military court." Every word landed like iron. Charles's face turned pale, and he agreed repeatedly. Lily didn't dare say a single word. After that, the rumors fell apart on their own, and Lily became the laughingstock of the entire compound. But when one scheme failed, she came up with another. She began approaching Lucas, accidentally running into him, offering him soup she claimed to have boiled herself, asking for help with trivial things. Each time she acted weak and gentle, trying to stir his sympathy or protective instinct. She thought all men were like Ethan. She was wrong. Lucas wasn't Ethan. His heart held only me. He ignored her little tricks, and at times he even looked annoyed. One day, Lily showed up again with a bowl of chicken soup, waiting for Lucas on his way home. Lucas rejected her with an icy expression. "Miss White, please have some self-respect. My wife's cooking is 100 times better than yours, and stop doing these pointless things. I don't want my wife to misunderstand." Then he turned and walked away without looking back. Lily stood there in the wind, holding that bowl of soup, her face as white as paper. All her pride and confidence were shattered to pieces by Lucas. She couldn't understand why Emily, could be loved so completely by such a perfect man, while she was stuck with someone like Ethan, a man who had long since run out of patience with her. Jealousy gnawed at her heart like a venomous snake. So she decided to destroy me in the cruelest, most vicious way possible. She set her sights on Lucas's career. Colluding with Ethan, using the remnants of Charles Gray's connections, they gathered so-called evidence against Lucas, half fabricated, half twisted. They submitted anonymous reports to higher authorities, accusing Lucas of a command mistake during a training exercise that caused equipment damage, and accusing him of abusing his authority to promote his own people. Even though the accusations were mixed with lies, in such a sensitive political period, the smallest hint of impropriety could ruin a military officer's future. The investigation team arrived at the unit almost immediately. Lucas was temporarily suspended pending review. The entire compound was thrown into chaos. Everyone in the compound avoided me as if I carried a plague. Those were the hardest days I had endured since my rebirth, but I didn't fall. I knew I couldn't. Lucas needed me. I visited him every single day, bringing him meals, updating him on the situation outside, comforting him, encouraging him. "Lucas, I believe you," I told him again and again. "No one knows your character better than I do. The innocent will be proven innocent. They won't wrong a good man." He held my hand, his eyes turning red. "Emily, I'm sorry I've dragged you into this. We're husband and wife. Don't say things like that." I smoothed his collar gently. Just trust me and trust yourself. We'll get through this. While calming Lucas, I was also fighting back in my own way. Quietly, methodically, I began collecting evidence. Drawing on memories from my previous life, I remembered that Ethan's future company had once engaged in shady financial dealings during its early expansion. Relying on those memories, I tracked down several key people and clues. Then I mailed those clues anonymously to the relevant authorities. I was certain, if anyone started digging, they would uncover far bigger problems. Just when Lucas's investigation reached a deadlock, my anonymous letters took effect. Charles Gray was formally investigated for serious economic crimes. Soon afterwards, someone, afraid of being implicated, turned on the Gray family. They revealed everything: how Charles, Ethan, and Lily White had colluded to frame Lucas. The truth came to light. Lucas not only had his position reinstated, but because of his composure and sense of duty throughout the ordeal, he was commended by his superiors and exceptionally promoted to deputy division commander. The Gray family collapsed entirely. Charles Gray was sentenced to life in prison. Ethan was expelled from his unit, becoming an unemployed nobody, and Lily White suffered the worst fate of all. For framing a military officer, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Her chaotic relationships during her university years were exposed as well, becoming the biggest scandal in the entire city. They said that on the day she was taken away, she lost her sanity, muttering nonstop, "Why? Why am I never better than her? Why can't I beat her?" When the dust finally settled, peace returned to my life with Lucas. It was a bright afternoon. Sunlight spilled into our small home through the window. Lucas wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin in the hollow of my shoulder. "It's all over," he whispered. I nodded as tears slipped down my cheeks. Yes, it was all over. The humiliation and resentment of my past life, the endurance and revenge of this one, everything melted into a quiet, overwhelming sense of gratitude for having survived. I turned around and looked at the man I loved, the man who had pulled me out of the mud, who had given me rebirth and happiness. "Lucas, do you know?" I finally said, "In my previous life, I married a man for 40 years, and all he left me in the end was a single dime." It was the first time I had ever spoken to Lucas about my past life. He listened quietly without interrupting. "That dime was like a brand of shame," I said softly, "burned into my heart. I carried it with me when I was reborn, and I swore that everyone who wronged me would pay the price." I reached into my pocket and took out a crisp and used 10-cent bill. I had kept it deliberately since my rebirth. Placing it in my palm, I offered it to Lucas. "Now," I said, "I want to give it to you." Lucas didn't take it. He took my hand, slowly curling my fingers inward, closing them around the tiny bill. Then he held that hand and led me toward the window. He pushed it open. "Emily," he said, looking straight into my eyes, his gaze warm and unwavering, "throw it away. Throwing it away means letting go of your past. From now on, you only have the present and the future. And in your future, you have me." My vision blurred again as tears rose. I lifted my hand with all my strength and flung that dime, a piece of paper carrying the love, hate, pain, and entanglements of 2 lifetimes, out into the open air. The bill fluttered upward, spinning like a severed butterfly. It drifted farther and farther away until it disappeared into the brilliant blue sky. In that moment, I felt every shackle on my body break apart. I felt lighter, freer than I had ever been. Lucas pulled me tightly into his arms, and his gentle, lingering kiss fell against my lips. "I love you, Emily," he whispered. "I love you, too," I breathed. Outside the window, the sunlight was perfect, warm and peaceful. Time itself seemed serene, and I knew my real life was only just beginning.